Hello, fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and today I am so glad that you are here with me because today I am thrilled to announce the coming of another Victober, and a very special Victober at that. So first off, if you're not familiar with Victober, it's a month-long readathon here on BookTube that happens every October in celebration of Victorian literature. So that includes British or Irish literature that was published or written between 1837 and 1901 during Queen Victoria's reign. And there is really only one thing you have to do to participate in Victober, and that is to read one work of Victorian literature in the month of October. It could be a novel, or a play, or poetry, or even some short stories, whatever you'd like really. But if you're looking for some extra special Victorian excitement, we have a whole host of Victorian-inspired challenges for you this year, and a group read-along as well. Now, this year is an extra special Victober, and that is because, believe it or not, it is the 10th annual Victober. That's right, 10 years of Victober. I can't believe it either. I've been participating since the very first Victober, and it's basically my favorite time of year. It is so fun to make all of these wonderful connections with people and revel in this amazing time period of literature. There are so many phenomenal Victorian novels and authors, and they were just so prolific and talented, and it's so rewarding to celebrate that as a community. Victober started out as Katie from Books and Things' idea, and Kate Howe has been hosting and creating amazing Victober content right from the start, and then Roz and I joined in with hosting in recent years. But this year, Katie had the idea to do something kind of wild and crazy and absolutely wonderful to make this Victober feel like an even grander celebration of Victorian literature. In honor of the 10th Victober, there will be 10 hosts and 10 challenges this year. In addition to myself, the hosts for Victober this year are, of course, Katie from Books and Things and Kate Howe, as well as Roz from Scally Dandling About the Books. And then joining us this year as well are Elizabeth at A Literary Princess, Hannah from Hannah's Books, Jess from the Dickens and Docs Bookstagram, and her newly minted BookTube channel by the same name, Milena from Milena Reads, Roy from Roy Reads Anything, and Catherine from Taking Tea with Catherine. And if you didn't catch all of that, don't worry, I will link all of their names and channels in the description down below. So by now, you're either really excited or breaking into a cold sweat about completing 10 challenges, or perhaps a little bit of both. Just remember that you really only need to read one piece of Victorian literature to partake in Victober, and the rest is just for fun. You can pick and choose which challenges you'd like to do, and we encourage you to double up and use the same book to apply to multiple challenges where you can. If you do want to complete as many challenges as possible, Kate has come up with the idea for a tier system of achievement levels for you. If you complete 1 to 3 of the prompts, you have reached Mr. Micawber level. If you complete 4 to 6 prompts, you have achieved Jane Eyre status. If you do 7 to 9 of the challenges, you are at Sherlock Holmes level. And if you complete all 10 challenges, you are Dracula, because as Katie so eloquently put it, you have to be an immortal, magical being who doesn't need to sleep in order to complete all 10 challenges. So let's talk about these challenges. I'll go through all of them with you and then give specific recommendations for my own, but I encourage you to check out all of the other hosts' videos because we each talk about and give recommendations for our own challenges in depth. So Kate's challenge is to read a Victorian book where friendship is featured. Victorian literature is full of these really deep and intense, emotional and intimate friendships where people develop bonds as strong as family, and I think this is a wonderful theme to explore in your Victober reading. I can't wait to hear more of Kate's thoughts on Victorian friendship and which books she specifically recommends for this one. Katie's challenge is to read a work of Victorian literature that is not a novel, so a play or short story or poem or even a work of nonfiction. This was actually Katie's challenge for the very first Victober, and it's so much fun that she's bringing it back and harkening back to that first Victober. Roz's challenge is Empire Spotting. See how many times you can spot signs of the Empire in your Victober reading. And I think that this challenge is brilliant because you don't have to read a specific book for it, but rather it's just a theme that you should be on the lookout for in your reading. There's an undercurrent of colonialism and empire found in almost all Victorian literature. It's not always overt, but it's almost always there, and this is a fun way to recognize that. Elizabeth's challenge is to read a work by an underrated Victorian woman writer, meaning not the Brontes, or Elizabeth Gaskell, or George Eliot, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, or Christina Rossetti. I can't wait to hear Elizabeth's recommendations for this one, who she considers underrated, and which authors she likes in particular. Hannah's challenge is to read a Victorian work that discusses education. I'm really excited about this one because education is such a common and important theme in Victorian literature. The way gender and class interact with the theme of education is fascinating. What once was the privilege of the wealthy became more accessible to all classes with massive education reform. I can't wait to hear what Hannah has to say about education in the Victorian era and which books she recommends as well. Jess's challenge is to step back in time and read a Victorian work set in a different era. Some books written in the Victorian era took place in the past, and it's interesting to learn more about the Victorians by seeing their interpretation of history. Milena's challenge is to spin a digital color wheel and pick a Victorian book with a cover that primarily features that color. You can pick any edition. You can check out her announcement video to explain this one in more detail. Roy's challenge is to read a Victorian work of fantasy. I am not particularly familiar with Victorian fantasy, and I can't wait to hear Roy's recommendations. I already have so many questions about this topic. Like, was all fantasy geared towards children? Because all of the examples I know of were. And how did Victorian fantasy influence and shape modern fantasy? Is fantasy and fairy tale different in the Victorian era? These could all be really fun things to think about with this challenge. And Catherine's challenge is to read a Victorian book that has a connection to Jane Austen. As someone who also hosts Jane Austen July, I find this prompt very exciting, and I can't wait to hear Catherine talk about it more. And then my challenge is to read a work of Victorian literature where a character experiences a change in class status, social mobility, rags to riches, fallen women, etc. Even though Victorian class structure was incredibly rigid and well-defined, so much of the drama and conflict of Victorian plots involves a change in class status for its characters and how the people around them react or contribute to such changes. During the Victorian era, the notion of social mobility and the self-made man was popularized, so rather than relying on inherited status, people sought to better themselves and their station in life through enough hard work or intelligence. In the other direction, characters could ruin themselves and their reputation and place in society through scandal or vices like drugs, alcohol, and gambling. For women, marriage was the most obvious tool to achieve a change in class status. If they secured an advantageous match, they could advance into a higher class or at least maintain the position they were born into. But women were also susceptible to ruin and poverty if the men around them did not secure their financial future, or if those they relied on financially suddenly passed away. And then there were fallen women who were abandoned and shunned, who either had a child out of wedlock or whose reputation was tarnished in some way. And we can't forget about the precarious class status of the governess, who wouldn't associate on equal footing with either the servants or the families they worked for, and were basically shut off from society, certainly a demotion from their typical genteel upbringing. These changes in class status are integral to so much of Victorian literature, and almost every novel has some level of anxiety about a shift or a potential shift in class status. If you're trying to give yourself more freedom with this challenge, you can stretch it a bit to include characters that are merely worried about a potential shift in class status, which should really open up the possibilities. Or you can follow the letter of the law with this challenge and focus on characters with a more obviously defined and transformational shift in class. For now, let's go over some of the more obvious examples you might choose to read. This isn't comprehensive at all, and I'm sure you'll be able to think of many, many more examples for this challenge. A very good choice, and perhaps the most obvious choice for this challenge, or at least the first one I thought about, is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Great Expectations is about an orphan named Pip who is brought up by his sister and her husband, and he's in training to be a blacksmith when he's informed that he has great expectations, that he has a mysterious benefactor and is to go to London to learn how to be a gentleman. So it's a rags to riches story, and there's the mystery of who this secret benefactor is and why Pip has been chosen for this opportunity. It examines how the change in Pip's class status and fortune affects him, and how people around him react to his newfound wealth. And as you expect, of course, from Dickens, there is just such a wonderful cast of characters in this book, too. Most Dickens books are full of people shifting around in class status, and you could probably make an argument for any Dickens book fitting this challenge. I can think of Oliver Twist off the top of my head, and another prime Dickens example that I can talk about without spoiling the book is Our Mutual Friend. There's a character named Mr. Boffin in here, who is also known as the Golden Dustman, who inherits a fortune after a lifetime of hard work. It's only one of the many interesting plot lines of this book, which centers around the mysterious death of John Harmon, the expected heir to a large fortune, and a whole host of characters who are all tangled up with him and his affairs in some way. Moving away from Dickens, Hardy is another author with an emphasis on shifting class. Many of his books would probably suffice, but the one that comes to mind, for me at least, is The Mayor of Casterbridge. It's about Michael Henchard, a flawed and complicated character who at the age of 21 gets very drunk at a fair and sells off his wife and infant daughter. This same man reinvents himself and becomes successful in the agriculture industry, gaining wealth and the title of Mayor of Casterbridge. It's after this point where his daughter and former wife re-enter his life, and after that, everything just goes on from there. Another choice for this challenge would be one of my personal favorites, Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre was born into a genteel family, but she was orphaned at a young age and taken in by relatives who treated her as beneath them. We follow Jane as she grows up. She faces childhood hardships living with her neglectful family, as well as surviving poor conditions at boarding school. As a young woman, she becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall, but something seems a bit off to her about the place, and Jane starts to unravel the mysteries of her employer's past and the house she lives in while trying to secure her own happiness. Jane's journey through life straddles multiple stations of class. Jane Eyre also works for a few of the other challenges. It features one of my most memorable friendships in literature, so that would be great for Kate's challenge. It deals with education, of course, for Hannah's challenge, and I'm sure you could find signs of empire in it. There are definitely post-colonial readings of Jane Eyre, so that's Roz's challenge. While we are on the subject of the Brontes, you could read Wuthering Heights for this challenge. Wuthering Heights is a wildly atmospheric book set on the wilderness of the English moors, and it follows the intense relationship between Cathy and Heathcliff and the repercussions of their relationship on subsequent generations. It's such an interesting book and one of my absolute favorites, even though I hate all of the characters. In terms of my challenge, the character of Heathcliff is found on the streets of Liverpool and taken in to live with the Earnshaw family. Though he has shifts in wealth and acquires property throughout the course of the book, he's never truly accepted as a gentleman. Sticking with the Brontes, I suppose you could always read Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte, as it follows her journey as a governess and what that means for her in terms of her class status. You might also choose to read John Halifax, Gentleman by Dinah Mullet Craik. The book follows John Halifax's journey from an impoverished orphan to a self-made titan of industry through honesty, initiative, and hard work. This is the epitome of the self-made man, and I think that it would also work well for Kate's challenge, as there's supposed to be a very strong friendship in it, and I think it also fits for Elizabeth's challenge as well. Or you might also choose to read a book with a fallen woman, such as Mary Barton or Ruth, both by Elizabeth Gaskell, or Esther Waters by George Moore. You could also read Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray for this challenge. Vanity Fair is about two women who are very different from each other. There's Amelia Sedley, who was a pampered daughter of a wealthy family, and Becky Sharp, an orphan who uses wit, charm, and frank manipulation to climb up the social ladder. The book follows the two women's journeys and their friends and family during and after the Napoleonic Wars, so this would work for Jess's challenge as well. So those are all the books that I will mention for now, but like I said, I'm sure there are many more that fit this challenge, both loosely and overtly, that you can come up with. So lastly, I'd like to announce the group read for this year, which I'm really excited about, and that is Hester by Margaret Oliphant. I haven't read this one yet, but I've been told that it meets a whole bunch of the challenges, including my own challenge. Hester is about the conflict between the elderly and powerful Catherine Vernon and her young, determined niece, Hester. In her youth, Catherine Vernon saved the prestigious family bank when Hester's father abdicated his duties, and Catherine has since risen to power as the head of the bank. Hester and her mother come back into town unaware of this past and this history, and Hester has to make sense of why Catherine doesn't like her, as well as navigate three potential suitors, one of which is Catherine's favorite nephew. I'm really excited to read this one. I actually don't think I've read anything by Oliphant yet, so I am really looking forward to it. We will be reading 2 chapters of Hester a day from the 1st of October to the 22nd of October, with 3 chapters on the final day. So that should be fairly manageable and give everyone some flexibility with catch-up days at the end of the month. So those were all of the challenges and the group read. If all of this still sounds a bit overwhelming and you'd like something to help you keep all of the challenges straight, Roy has graciously made a Victober scorecard complete with a list of all the challenges and tiered levels of achievements for you to use this month. It's a gorgeous resource and it should help you organize your Victober reading quite a bit. I will link it down below. I'd also like to encourage you to join the Victober Discord server, which I'll link below as well. One of the best parts of Victober and what makes it extra special is being able to connect with everyone and chat about Victorian literature. And we also encourage you to make your own Victober content and post about your own Victober reading on any social media platform you might frequent, whether you have your own BookTube channel or Instagram or anything else. Just be sure to use the hashtag Victober so we can all find your content. So I think that is finally everything I have for you today. I hope you are as excited as I am for this very special 10th Victober. I can't wait to watch the other hosts' announcement videos and recommendations and figure out a TBR, and I can't wait to hear what you plan to read as well. Please let me know in the comments if you plan on participating in Victober this year and what you'd like to read. I am still getting my reading and filming plans together for the month, but if you have any special Victober video requests, please do let me know in the comments section. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in another bookish video very soon. Bye!